It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. Today's date is I'm going to say the 11th. That's tomorrow. 10th of November, 2025. Okay. And previous block, we talked about the fact that the Kaldi's coffee shops are trying to unionize. John, have you ever had a job where the working conditions were not great?
No, I haven't. I mean, other than doing the show with you, I think I've always been pleased with my coworkers.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. Okay. My point being is you read the article Kaldi's, okay? And I'm not making excuses for Kaldi's. The Kaldi's, as I understand it, the Kaldi's is owned by the Zimmer family, which owns a lot of radio stations, not here in St. Louis, but they own there. And by the way, they are an excellent operator, excellent
Columbia,
radio operator.
Joplin, a bunch of other cities.
Jeff City, Springfield, places like that. Okay.
And they purchased, I just looked it up over break, they purchased the Kaldi's chain in around 2007. So they've owned it for almost 20 years now. And to clarify, Brad, Kaldi's is not trying to unionize. Workers at Kaldi's
and they claim, I read the story, they talk about one place where the air conditioning went out, another place where the sewers backed up. You know, being the guy that owns businesses, I was never, when I had a bunch of employees, I never wanted to torture my employees.
Really?
I always tried to make things better for my employees, okay? But there were some times when things out of my control ended up having a bad influence or bad impact on the employees. Once upon a time, our air conditioner at the office did go out. And within 24 hours, I had a new air conditioner installed, okay? No, actually, I think it took 2 days. It took a couple days. So it was in the summer, and the guy came out and took a look at it. Can't be repaired. Okay, can you get me a new one? No, we'll have to wait a day because we don't have one in stock. I got to get one from Kansas City, whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, okay? I did not purposely torture my employees, okay? And the same thing with drains backing up. If some people have homes where you never have a drain backup, other people have homes where it's almost a daily occurrence. There are people that live in the Manchester area, or not the Manchester, the Maplewood area, and if you're familiar with Deer Valley Creek, that there's a problem there where a lot of houses, water backs up. Sometimes the sewers back up in your house. Sometimes the sewers back up in businesses. And it's to the point where I don't think the owner is sitting at home counting his money going, the sewer is backing up in my building right now. And I love the fact that my employees are having to deal with that smell and the stuff on the floor. And my next point is that if you are an employee working at a location, wherever it is, where things are not good, don't you just look for a new job, John?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, to me, now I have to confess that I didn't read the stories about Kaldi's and the unionization attempts. But if you're a union organizer and your entire 2025 and 2026 are based on how many new people and new locations can you organize, any excuse will do. So you go to Kaldi's and you say, hey, have there been any problems? Oh, yeah, one day it was hot in here. Okay, that's enough. We'll use that. We'll go to St. Louis Public Radio and we'll tell a sob story about how you had to sweat one day at work.
But I think your point is well taken because of the fact that this started with the baristas at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And they're essentially saying, well, if they can unionize, we can unionize as well, too.
Yeah, and I think that, when you look at a headline like, workers at Kaldi seek to organize and unify for their own power and jurisdiction. Who went to them and said, hey, we got an idea. We're going to unionize you guys. You'll get your name on, you'll get your face on television. We'll help you out with a little money. Maybe we'll give you some walking around money. I'm not saying that there's bribes involved. But, maybe you could help these guys with a little bit of walking around money and make them a little local star for a few months.
I'm not an anti-union guy, but there was a time when the unions thrived, and the reason for that was there was no government oversight of most businesses.
Tie it into OSHA, Brad.
Right. There was no OSHA. There was no EPA. If you were working in the assembly line back in the day for Ford Motor Company and you're working on those Model Ts and you get your fingers in the wrong place and you lose a couple fingers, they sent you home, they bandaged it up, and you came back to work a couple days later and you still did your job. Maybe they reassigned you because you had 8 fingers instead of 10. You needed all 10. And I'm not saying that was good. The unions came in and the union said, okay, this is dangerous. we need to take care of this. We need to take care of that. Also, you're working these guys 18-hour days. This is not right, okay? The unions came in and made a change, and for the better. They made the places safer. They made the working conditions better. They essentially made it more favorable to the employees, that they weren't going to get injured. They weren't going to work 18-hour shifts and things like that. Okay, those days are gone because of the fact that if there's a workplace, and anybody knows this, and I've been involved with this as well too, OSHA, if someone gets, matter of fact, I told you the crazy story of my high school friend that got his thumb chopped off when in shop class. He was a shop teacher. He had to go to court over that. Literally had to go to court in St. Charles County, because this happened in Orchard Farms High School. Had to go to court because there's a law in the state of Missouri that states that if anybody loses any kind of an appendage in their employment, you have to essentially had to be adjudicated by the court, and they have to do some kind of, has this been taken care of? Has this problem been alleviated? Are there safety measures in part? Have you been taken care of? Is your health back to where it should be? There's no monkey business anymore. And what do the unions do? They don't really do anything with that anymore. You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. So what you're saying is that unions had their role, and they did it well. And now we have a lot of government protection, and some would say too much regulation. And therefore, the role of unions, particularly in safety, has been minimized.
Well, but they talked about the fact, in the article, they talked about the fact that at at least one location, the drain kept backing up. Okay, that's a health department issue. If you're an employee working in a food service place, and technically, I guess Kaldi's would be food service. They don't really. I guess they do serve they serve rolls and stuff like that as well too. In addition, to
you can get like an avocado toast,
right? Stuff like that. Okay, so don't you call the health department and say, "Hey, I'm an employee here at Kaldi's, and you know what? We got a situation where the sink backs up. Doesn't if you're in St. Louis County, doesn't St. Louis County health inspector come out and take a look at that and say,
I'm sure, but it's not necessarily either or. So you could do that, and then again, when the union organizer who has 20 companies on his target list to try to go agitate and recruit people at is like, hey, has anything bad happened lately? Or, anything that you could say that this business doesn't do well? Well, one time a sink backed up. Okay, that'll do for now. St. Louis Public Radio will love that anecdote. I mean, you have to look at it, Brad. The people that are union organizers have, well, in many cases, they have a family that's not just pets and boxed wine. But most of them have families, they have a real life, and as part of their job, they have goals that they have to meet each year. And so we can't be mad at them for going into Kaldi's and talking to a few workers and say, hey, we're trying to stir some stuff up here. Do you have any hard luck stories?
See, I've been on both sides of the equation. I have been in union. I've been in two unions. I was in after American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, which merged with SAG. Now it's SAG after. And I was in the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers for a short period of time, Local 4, which was the broadcast technicians. That's a crazy story in itself, that at one point in time the station was being forced to, because we were on the air, and the way this used to work was the IBW guys at KXOK and KMOX, if you were an air talent, you weren't allowed to touch the equipment. You sat on
couldn't touch the cords, Brad. You couldn't plug one thing in and one place and unplug it and put it somewhere else.
Right. And I had friends of mine that worked at the TV stations, which are still union with AFTER and with IBW. And if you dared touch a camera, oh my God, they filed a union's grievance against you. Now that's pretty much gone, because back in the day, you used to see when the news crews went out, they'd have a van. They had a guy who drove the van who was IBW Local 4, and the talent who was AFTER SAG, and the union guy set up the camera and plugged in the microphone, all that kind of stuff, and handed it to the talent. And that's the only time the talent was allowed to touch any equipment. Now that's gone, to the point where they're pretty much, most of the people are what they call backpack journalists, where they go out and they set up a tripod and they put the camera on the tripod. They shoot their own show.
What station does that the best in mid-Missouri, Brad?
I don't know. Do you have a
This
preference?
is one of your Brad's greatest hits.
One of my greatest hits? Who does that the best?
Yeah, you talk about it all the time. KOMU.
Well, yeah. Well, KOMU. Yeah, exactly. Because
they're backpack journalists. You use the example all the time. They're a one-person operation. They'll go set up the camera. They'll do the thing.
Well,
they'll do the whole thing.
Channel 5's like that now as well, too. And even to the point where they don't even need the satellite or the microwave trucks anymore, because they now have this thing where literally it is in a backpack. And what they do is they take 3 cellular modems from all 3 carriers, AT&T, Sprint, and AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. and they combine the bandwidth of all three of them, and they send back full broadcast quality audio from a backpack plugged into a battery pack. And it's to the point where it's like, holy cow, things come a long way. To me, and the interesting part of this is, I don't know if I told this story. My old boss, Ron Grubbs, who used to work at the old KSD 550 when it was still owned by the Post-Dispatch, he talked about there were 5 unions at KSD. 5 unions. In the air studio, you had the guy on the air who was the American Federation, or was after. Then you had a guy that was a carryover from the old days when they had live music on KSD, when they have bands and things like that. The guy who queued up the records was American Federation of Musicians. And literally, there was one guy who put in the old-timey days, put the stylus on the record and queued the record up. Then there was a guy who sat across the glass who was IBW Local 4. But if one of the light bulbs in the studio went out, they called in another IBW Local 1, who was the Electrical Workers Union, and all the front office people, including the salespeople, were in the newspaper guild. So you had one building where there were 5 union jurisdictions, and today, if KSD is around, but it's not in the original owner, they would have 0 unions, which they do now. And the crazy thing for me is there's stations like, for example, Odyssey. I don't still understand how this works. Same thing with the Hubbard people. WIL is a union station, but yet everybody else on the other stations is non-union. So in one studio, you have the air staff at WIL was a union, and the studio right next to it, which is the Arch, is non-union. Same thing at Odyssey. You got Camo X, which is union, but right down the hall, you got 97.1, which is non-union. Explain
So that's probably just legacies from the earlier stations, right?
But how does that work? How do you work? How do you work in a building? That would be like at in the Chevy plant out there. They produce 2 basic vehicles. They produce the Savannah, which is the cargo van, the old-timey van, which they haven't revised, everybody else has. And they also produce the pickup trucks, the GMC Canyon and the Chevrolet Colorado. Okay, that would be like the guys who are producing the vans on the van side are union, and the guys producing the pickup trucks on the Colorado and the Canyon side are non-union. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, you should ask a 50-year-plus radio veteran how that works, Brad.
Well, that's me, but
I know. Maybe you should. I'm surprised you would not. But I mean, it's not uncommon for you to have union and non-union folks working on the same job, wouldn't you say? Doesn't that happen in other industries?
I don't know of any. I mean, do you know of any?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, but it would also be like you could have. Here's an example: at a big political event, you would have folks that work on the official side standing right next to, but totally not coordinating with, people that work on the campaign side.
If you've ever talked to anybody who does conventions in Las Vegas, and I'm talking like businesses that do conventions, they will tell you the stories of how incredibly difficult it is to work in Las Vegas because of all the different unions. If you can't, like if you were someone you were setting up your booth at the convention and you brought some stuff in on your little 2-wheel dolly, you have just violated a union rule.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty. And Brad, would there be a certain reason why when Las Vegas was first built, I don't know, organized labor might have had a foothold?
Yeah, they ran the place. Go back and watch the movie Casino, and you'll understand what it was all about, which is sort of interesting. Now the backlash is, it's funny you should bring that up. Maybe we'll pick this up tomorrow. I heard a guy over the weekend talk about how he wished Las Vegas went back to the days of the mob owning it because of the fact that you didn't pay for parking. Now they're even talking about, I don't know if you heard this, now they're talking about, the casinos are talking about not giving you free drinks when you're playing any of the games anymore. And
yeah, because you were talking about being in, the name escapes me, but kind of the Old Town before, and places you've stayed before, Brad, and how much you liked it at some areas, and then how some places had a certain drink minimum, and the drink, you could get a Shirley Temple for $20 or something like that.
Are you talking about Glitter Gulch, where I got conned into going in Glitter Gulch to watch the topless ladies? And because
I think so. That's what it
the
was,
bouncer
Brad.
says, "Hey, buddy, no cover charge tonight." "Okay, come on in." He opens the door, so I walk in, and then as I I walk in, look around, go, not my kind of place. I'm told by the bouncer inside there's a 1 drink minimum, and I have to buy at least 1 drink. Otherwise, something bad might happen to me. So I ordered my 1 drink, and it was like, a couple ice cubes. It was amaretto sour, and it maybe had 0.06 milliliters of alcohol in it, and that was my drink. I drank it and left and thought to myself, never again. But Glitter Gulch is gone. It's now... It's interesting because you know the history. You know what's now in place of Glitter Gulch?
I have no idea.
The casino that has one of the 2 Las Vegas or Missouri gambling licenses.
Is it Harris?
No, the other one.
Ameristar.
No, it's Circa. Circa has the 2 licenses.
Oh, no way. One of the sports gambling.
Yes.
I love, I met a girl from Glitter Gulch. Did I ever tell you about this?
John, I think we'll have to pick that up tomorrow.
Nah, she was quite glitterous. She kept wanting to show me her glitterous. I was like, I'll find it on my own, baby.
John, say goodbye.
See you tomorrow, Brad.